podcast. Today we have Paul Bernier. Actually, the Bernier, do you say it the French way?
It's the French way. It's a French-Canadian way.
Okay. So we have Paul Bernier, who is French-Canadian. Paul and I met on what was the smallest airplane I've ever been on. We flew from Boca del Toro to Panama City. It was a really tiny plane. I was terrified. I remember this flight quite vividly because I remember getting on the plane and I was like that passenger that nobody wants to sit next to. And then he had the luck of sitting next to me. I was a complete mess. I was with like luggage that was way too big for the airplane, and I was nervous, and he was amazing. He was honestly the biggest gift to me to sit next to, but I will let him tell you about himself. So Paul, what is your background? I know, but so our guests understand, what is your history? Where are you now in life, and how did you get to that point?
Where am I? Well, I could start with Sawadee because I'm in Bangkok right now. That's where I've established myself the last couple of months, and we're talking about location independent work or living, but it just came at a moment in my life that I needed some rest because I've traveled extensively, and I just needed to put myself down somewhere. And now I decided, not looking at the trips I have to make to take care of the houses, which I own and rent, but I decided to establish myself in Thailand because I love the culture, I love the people, I love how respectful they are about everyone, because you can go on doing your thing as long as you just don't harm anybody. So that's where I am now in my life, after having flown 35 years as an airline pilot and not sleeping in my own bed for long periods of time. So one of the things I enjoy the most nowadays is sleeping.
We were talking just before the recording. I, for the first time in a long time, also now not 35 years, more like, well, I was fully independent. Like 3 years I went without any place that was home. I only had my backpack and some things in a storage locker.
And your
technically too.
laptop.
Yeah. No, I like, oh my God. I travel with like this huge like backpack that weighs probably, I think sometimes it weighs 18 kilo, and also a carry-on bag. So it's not that I'm not without anything. But there was a long period of time. There was a solid 3 years that all I had these were all I had. And my sister, I love her to death. She kept a box at her house for me, and that box was like my things. And like I would sometimes put little trinkets in there, and like, stuff that didn't make sense to carry around. And that was like the one feeling of home that I had. So for the first time ever, I have a home. I decided to take a home base and travel from here for a while because I couldn't bear to be living out of a suitcase any longer. I needed to have some place that I could go back to that I would call home.
I know the feeling.
And so,
even though my suitcase is still on the wardrobe open and still things in it, there's one thing I cannot change as a habit, is not having my suitcase inside, because it's been with me all my life, and I have difficulties emptying totally my suitcase, which means I won't travel again. I don't know. It's just a signal for me that says, well, now I'm settling down, and I'm unable to settle down more than what I'm doing now.
I think there's something to that. I have another friend who's a traveler, and he and I also, we both have kind of a setup in our lives that at any given point, give me 15 minutes notice and I can be in a taxi on my way to the airport. So would you say you're the same?
15 minutes, not anymore, because I've lived with a schedule all my life, and I had to be at the airport at that time you imagine that I got to be on time, even though I was sometimes late for my flight, which was not the best of things. But they have
500 people waiting for the captain.
They have to wait.
Sorry, guys.
I prefer to plan nowadays than just jump on the plane and in 15 minutes notice, because I'm also getting older. Maybe at 35 years old, I would do the same, but Now I just need some more time to settle down and organize, even though when you travel a lot, organizing is much easier than most of people who don't travel a lot. You got all your tricks, you got all your habits, your applications, you book hotels, and that you can relate, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah, you know what kind of flights you want to take and which ones you don't want to take. So many things. But I did love traveling. I still have some few houses a little bit everywhere in the world. When I arrived in Thailand, I couldn't resist to buy some other properties. I bought a property in Samui by the sea. I bought a property in Bangkok, which are going to be built because what I've always done with investments is to buy off-plan properties. And this way it's cheaper at the purchase time and you can always resell with more value. It also gives you more time to plan your financial budget because they usually want to see money within 2 weeks of buying something.
Let me pause you. So I think our listeners may get lost. So I just want to sum this up. So you were a pilot, an airline pilot for 35 years. For 35 years, you traveled the world. Did you get to travel? Like, did you take time to see the places that you flew to, or were you really just in and out of airports and airport hotels?
That's a real good question, Michelle. When I started flying, well, I'll sound like a dinosaur, but when I started flying, we had 1 week, 2 weeks layover. We went to South America and we were staying 5, 6 days in Rio. We were staying 3, 4 days in Chile. We were really enjoying places. After a while, airline changed their frequencies, so it wasn't one flight a week, but it became one flight a day for most airlines. And then you had
Wait, I
short.
have to pause you. I have to stop because this is, I'm sorry. By the way, tomorrow or 2 days is my 40th birthday. So I'm not young. I'm not a spring chicken, but,
Spring chicken.
but I definitely, I don't remember the glory days of flying. So, you used to, like, would they pay for you because this sounds to me like a dream. Like, you fly to Rio and they pay for you to stay there for a week or 2 weeks?
We had hotels, of course, hotels were paid, and we had sundries every day. So they gave us, well, maybe 30 years ago, they gave us $80 a day to just eat, drink, enjoy, and we did. So
Wow.
those were, as you said, the glory days, and it became kind of a hustle after that because you had really to work and rest to get your sleep properly.
Yeah, so then they realized this is very expensive. They sped up the schedules, and you were flying then every day. Or what did it look like when things started to change?
It depends of which flights you're doing. I was doing mainly long haul flights, so long distance flights. And when you fly long haul flights, you need a minimum of rest, so 1 day or 2 days before you can leave again, depending of which airlines, of course, and where you're going, the length of the flights.
For me, once a flight passes 10 hours, it starts to really affect me. So I actually try to break up, like you said, everyone has their own flight pattern. I actually try not to fly more than 10 hours straight. So like if there's a choice between a direct flight that's 14 hours and a layover that takes 24 hours, I'm actually going to take the layover.
Oh,
Because
really?
I
Yeah.
need that time to, yeah, I need that time to stop, to stretch, to walk around, to eat real food, and then to get back and do it again. So what is for you the turning point where you're like, no, it's too much.
I will tell you something now, and don't laugh. I always preferred the longest the flights because on board we could sleep. So the longest the flights, the longer I could sleep on board, and I could arrive at the destination fresher. This being said, I started flying when we didn't have bunks on board to sleep, to rest. And we were the first airline to introduce bunks on board. And that really changed the whole market because you could have two crews on board and one crew resting and the other one working. And that way you could fly longer. And also the planes became more efficient. So you could also carry the same amount of fuel and go further. I hear what you're saying about not more than 10 hours because it gets very tiring on board. But the hassle of getting of the airport, going through the taxi thing, going to your hotel, and then the day after security, check-in, and all those things, they are not worth it in my opinion.
And I think when I say so, this is true because it also depends on the airport. If, for instance, I have the layover is at Istanbul airport, forget it. I would rather just keep going straight. That airport is chaos. I think there's nothing about that airport that isn't nonsense, and also the food's not good. And airports, if you're listening, we know which airports have good food, and Istanbul does not have good food, especially if you're celiac. So, but like other airports, like I love Dubai airport. I love laying over in Dubai. I love laying over not in Delhi, but in there's one airport in the south in Kochi. I really like laying over. So there are like it depends a little bit. Okay, so you grew up with the airline industry to some degree. You watched it turn from like this beautiful, really like lifestyle kind of career to something that became chaos, which I think we've seen in other fields as well, like medicine and things like this. And at some point you decided it's time to retire. I'm tired of flying. Or I'm not tired of flying, but I'm tired of flying when they tell me to fly. And you transitioned and you started to, had you already invested in real estate, or was that when you decided to start investing in real estate?
When I was 50, I had a layover in Panama, and I decided I had 3 days layover and decided to fly to Costa Rica on the Caribbean side, where one of my friends told me it was paradise. I flew there and it was going through Bocas del Toro and then with the shuttle to the coast. Within 2 days, I saw a house and I bought it.
Okay, so in Costa Rica on the Caribbean side.
Yeah, I fell in love with it, with the area. And at that time, the area was not an area which was really visited by local Costa Rican because it's more African descendants, and people were thinking it's unsafe, which was funny because I was going to the Pacific and I didn't feel safe there because everyone there were
I've
living
been robbed
behind.
in the Pacific. I went swimming and they took all my clothes and my shoes. They took everything.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But during COVID, when Costa Rican people couldn't leave the country, they discovered the Caribbean side, and now it's flooded with local people. They fell in love with it, and it's the new place in Costa Rica if you want to travel. And fortunately, I found at that moment a cheap house, perfect location. Because when I look for something, an investment, it's always first the location, not about the house. The house, we can always improve it or change it or destroy it, demolish, and build again. The house I had in Costa Rica needed a lot of love. And for the last 13 years, I never stopped improving it. What I'm always doing when I'm buying something, I'm improving it to the way that I would love to have that house. I would feel like it's becoming my paradise. I know a lot of people are buying properties to rent those days. They put some cheap furnitures because they don't want people to break. They put maybe some less expensive stuff. But I never looked upon the budget to improve a house because I want people, when they go there, to have the experience of their lives and feel like they're really happy of being somewhere.
And I would agree with you. I have 2 questions. First, I have to say I agree with you. I constantly am getting into fights with my clients about this because they put IKEA, and sometimes worse than IKEA. And I tell them, you want to get good prices and good tenants, you don't put IKEA. Like the good tenants will see the good furniture and they pay for it. And have you felt that to be true, that mostly your guests, the people that stay in your properties have been like good tenants? that they
I
see the
have,
love you put into the house?
I have since I rent, I've never, and I'm really, really lucky, but I did put the love. I never had less than 5-star reviews. Just to get you an idea, I got a house by the sea in Canada, very remote location. It's about 9 hours car from Montreal. You get there and there's not much. It's nature at its best. It's very rough nature. And last year I put a $20,000 sofa in it, and it's people would call me mad,
I
but
might call you mad for that.
yeah, but I got that price. I got the sofa and one summer of rentals, and everybody appreciated it. They always compliment, and they say, well, that 1 week or 2 weeks felt like 1 month. It gave us the rest we needed for the rest of the year. And one big compliment was this lady, which is very, very busy. She an agency for singers and actors, and she said to me, in 2 weeks, I did about 6 months of work I would have done in the big city. So
I'll be your next guest. Okay. So the property in Costa Rica, this was your first international investment. Can I ask, how much did you pay? I have to ask.
I paid at that time $140,000.
Okay, so it's not so cheap. It's actually that was a risk you took. Would you say it paid off? You're happy you did it?
It paid off. It's not about rentals. It's about the love for Costa Rica I entertained afterwards. The area, the pura vida feeling, and all the greenery and the serenity it gives you. When I was flying, I was going there maybe sometimes 3-4 days, and it just gave me the rest to keep going. And now I get there maybe 1 month, 1.5 months a year, and mainly to take care of the house, take care of the garden. I only have fruit trees everywhere and herbs, and which is becoming my Garden of Eden.
I love that. And so this is the thing that fascinated me when I met you. I think prior, now I need to think, like, when did I always struggled with wanting to have a home and not being able to decide where. And then I met you and I was like, well, here's someone who and it's something that I had entertained for a long time, having a few different homes, but you really do it and you really enjoy all of them. And that's the thing. These aren't just investment properties for you. You bought this home, you used it, you live there, but you also rent it when you're not there. So it's also making money for you, right?
A lot of people were hesitant when I was in relationships. People living with me were hesitant renting the places because they said, well, it's not your own place anymore. People will be there. You don't know if things will be broken or not. But in all those years, I've never had experienced something negative. I think you got to scan, you
Yeah.
got to select your crowd as well, which is one of the most important things. To follow your gut feeling. When somebody contacts you, I don't want to seem like unrespectful, but and I respect everyone's education to their own. But if somebody makes 4 mistakes in one word, writing me to rent something, I'll be hesitant of renting because I search for quality people to be at my places, and it prevents you a lot of problems in life because at a distance everything's more difficult to arrange. And the second point you wanted to address, I think, is having trustful people at those places, which is not always easy. But I've been blessed. I've been blessed at all places with the perfect persons, to trustable persons to take care of them. You have to take care of those persons as well. You have to be all the time there for them and tell them what to do. And well, I give them, example, Christmas bonuses. I don't have to, small stuff, which they really appreciate, which creates a bond between you and them. You have to work on those things.
I'm going to pause you right there because I think that's really a key point that you're highlighting. It's actually something that I've not thought of, but of course it makes complete sense. I'm with you. Whenever I have like people working, and I have my team is distributed around the world, and I always try and check in with them, and when I can, I try and fly and see them. Um, and I kind of gave up at some point. I tried to buy them like gifts for the holidays, depending on what region they're in. And like catching all the Christmases and the Hanukkahs and the everything. And I kind of gave up, but you're doing it. And this is, so in order to make sure that your team is really invested in your property, you're investing in them and you're keeping the connection personal. And I think this is really important for listeners to understand. There's a few ways you can do this. You can hire an agency, or you can, in Paul's case, do it yourself. But then, Paul, you're really like connecting with those people, and I think that's also part of maintaining it as your home, right? As opposed to an investment property, that you have this like intimate connection with the people who are caring for your space. Am I getting that right?
It's right, because the intimate connection is not only with yourself, it's with the house, the property. So they will care about the property as much as they care for them or for you. The people I have, they know my property by heart, and they know where each stuff is, and I'm kind of always very, very detailed about what I want, what I ask them, and sometimes they laugh because we make lots of jokes about it. Yesterday, it was another Canadian puzzle coming up. But those Canadian puzzles, if you bring it with humor, they
What is a Canadian puzzle?
fine.
I'm laughing, but what is a Canadian puzzle?
By Canadian puzzle is if I ask to put an electricity cable on the right and to hide it after they put it on the left side of the wall and it shows, then they have to deconstruct everything they've done, and that's an example. Or opening up my automatic coffee machine, which is jammed, and then they're also busy with their own lives. They have other properties to take care of, but then they do it, and then I say, well, you have also to go get some coffee grains to take care of it, and then, oh no, don't put that kind of water, and then it gets a Canadian puzzle if I ask too
Okay,
much.
so it's an inside joke. I love this, and this is why this is so cool. And so, okay, so you bought your first property, and then it went well, it worked out, you loved it. Where was the next purchase, or what made you then decide to do it again?
My intention was never only to rent. My intention was to buy properties for myself. I grew up not in one house, but moving from one house to the other all my youth. And after that, with my job, I was doing the same. And I think I kind of needed to have houses, my own houses. And I don't want to be stuck with one place in the world, because the world is big and nice and beautiful. There are some beautiful places out there. And of course, you can rent everywhere, but when you've got your own place, which you can find to your taste, and you can stay there a month or two in the year, it really feels different. I'm not against renting, because, of course, this is also about renting places. You've got some beautiful places out there. I just love to invest in properties. And one of the things I do is, when I buy a property, I always put it for sale the very moment I buy it. I never stick to it. Yeah. I've got no emotions.
That is an insider's tip.
Yeah, I've got I've got emotions, of course, but I've got no attachment emotion to it.
Yeah, it's a Buddhist belief, right? To never form attachments to these things. Everything is semi-permanence of things.
If people can be happy with it, well, then I'm happy. That's also
that.
Buddhist.
That's really beautiful. I guess because it's I remember saying, like, one that I talked to that was talking about love and breakups, and it said, I love you, and if you love me, better for me. But if you don't love me, that's also okay. And this is the semi-permanence of it. So if this works for me, better for me, and if it doesn't work for me, that's also okay. That is really amazing. Yeah. Every time I feel like we could talk 4 hours, and our connections have always been I was in Cambodia 2 days after you were in Cambodia. And so you have like a variety of places now around the world. You have Latin America, you have North America. Do you still have a place in North America, in Canada?
I still got my house in Canada in the remote area. It's very, very far north of Quebec. I'm looking to sell it, but it's
So everyone, it's for sale. and
yeah.
and you've
But
heard how well his properties do.
one tell me to not do it because every time we get there, people are it makes them so happy. The feeling of living by the sea and being far of everything. But the distances, after a while, it takes it takes a toll. You
Because you
don't
can't just fly there. You have to fly and drive.
fly and drive. I could fly a bit more, but they're more logistic to it. Take a car because I always bring some stuff to improve or to bring back, or I got a warehouse in Montreal for some more stuff. I I feel nowadays that South Asia is one of my favorite places to live because you are so flexible about where to travel and where to go. If I want to go to, as you said, Cambodia or Vietnam or Bali or any other places, it's so nearby and so easy. The flights are cheap. Uh, I love Thailand. I was this year 6 months in Bali to try to buy a property. I tried to buy 4 different properties.
Just to wrap it up, so you've now bought a home in a few places, and I'm gonna put, if it's okay with you, I would love to share with everyone the home that's for sale in Canada in case people want to buy it. You're now spending your time in Southeast Asia, and this is becoming more of where you call home. And I really want to get into what it is to have homes in different regions and to be semi-attached to those places. But I think we should save this for next time. What do you say?
It's a good idea. One thing I would want to add is this lifestyle is not made for everyone. And because you arrive in a new place, you got to adapt. You got sometimes to learn the language, to make new friends. And some people are not so comfortable doing it. It's a matter of knowing your limits and knowing your boundaries in life and what you're able to do and wanting to do as well, to go as far as you want to. You are someone who's used to it, so for you it sounds very easy. But for some other people, it sounds very unattainable. Do you agree?
I almost want to say, I wanted to say something earlier, but I have the same background where people ask, where are you from? And it's a really hard question for me to answer because I don't have any one place that I'm from. My parents moved a lot. My parents, it's like the running joke in my family. When they move to a new place, they say, this is it, we're not moving again. And 2 years later, they're packing up and moving again. I have that in my blood, and I have that in my blood, and I have this need. I've been sitting in one place for 6 months now, and I'm losing my mind, and I know that I have to do it. I'm working on my visa here so that I can call this place home long term. But I really have the need to move, to be in new places. I have a hard time with saying like one place is the place for me. And so I think if people are listening to this, they're curious about what that looks like, or there's any number of ways that you can make this lifestyle work for you, or location independent lifestyle be your lifestyle. So we will get into the personal side of things next time. But Paul, thank you so much. I could listen to you talk for hours. I love hearing from you. Thank you so much for taking time today. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up this episode?
That'd be a good idea to make another episode about logistics of those things.
No, we could talk for years about logistics. But I
Well,
want to get into the
can.
personal side of it. Paul, thank you so much, and we will speak soon.
Okay, thank you, Michelle.